Mary Thompson was only 19 when she first stepped onto the beaches of Normandy, the deafening roar of bombs and gunfire all around her. Each step into the sand was a step into chaos, a step into fear, but also into history. She had trained for months, memorizing every procedure, every emergency protocol, but nothing could prepare her for the reality she faced. The smell of salt, smoke, and blood mixed in the air. Soldiers screamed, artillery roared, and yet, in the middle of this storm, Mary found herself moving with a clarity, a purpose that would define her life forever. The dawn of June 6, 1944, had arrived. The beaches were alive with tension and chaos. Mary's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to focus. She carried a medical kit strapped to her back, a small first aid pack, a pair of surgical scissors, and an unwavering determination to save lives. She was one among hundreds of young American women who had volunteered to serve their country in roles that would challenge everything they had ever known about courage and sacrifice. But Mary's story was different, not because she was special, but because she had the rare combination of determination, intelligence, and heart that could turn fear into action. She had grown up in Des Moines, Iowa, a quiet town where cornfields stretched as far as the eye could see, where Sunday mornings were for church and evenings were for baseball games and family dinners. Mary had always been ambitious, bright, and deeply compassionate. Even as a child, she had an instinct for caring, nursing injured birds back to health, helping neighbors with chores, and volunteering at the local hospital. Her parents encouraged her curiosity, her desire to serve, and her insistence on learning everything she could about the human body, medicine, and emergency care. By the time she was 18, she had completed her basic nursing training and was eager to step beyond her small-town life, to make a real difference in a world that was suddenly engulfed in war. The moment the United States declared war on Japan in December 1941, Mary felt a stirring within her, a call to serve. She remembered sitting by the radio with her parents, listening to the news of battles overseas, hearing the names of towns and villages that seemed impossibly distant, yet terrifyingly real. She knew that she could not stay behind while so many were risking their lives. Volunteering for the Army Nurse Corps in 1942 became the first real choice of her adult life. She packed her belongings, wrote letters to her family, and boarded a train that would take her to Chicago for training, a journey that would change her forever. Training was relentless. Mary's days were filled with long hours in classrooms where instructors drilled her on medical procedures, emergency surgeries, and battlefield triage. Her nights were spent memorizing protocols, practicing bandages, injections, and wound care on mannequins, and studying the anatomy of injuries that she hoped she would never witness in reality. The Army demanded perfection, and Mary gave nothing less. Her peers noticed her discipline and her determination. "She's fearless," one of her fellow nurses whispered one evening as they scrubbed instruments together. "Not because she's not scared, but because she doesn't let the fear stop her." By 1944, Mary had been deployed overseas, and she had already seen the harsh realities of war in makeshift hospitals and field tents in England. But Normandy was different. The scale of the operation, the ferocity of the enemy, and the sheer number of soldiers who needed care was staggering. When she landed on Omaha Beach, Mary was confronted by a tidal wave of chaos. Soldiers wounded by gunfire and shrapnel, medics rushing in all directions, smoke obscuring the horizon, and the constant, terrifying sound of artillery. It was the kind of moment that would either break a person or define them, and Mary Thompson was determined to be defined by it. Her first minutes on the beach were a blur. She moved from soldier to soldier, assessing injuries, administering morphine, applying bandages, and giving words of reassurance to terrified young men who could barely stand, let alone comprehend the carnage around them. "It's going to be all right," she whispered repeatedly, even when the situation was far from all right. Every movement was precise, practiced, and brave. She found herself thinking less about her own safety and more about the soldiers, each of whom represented a life that depended on her skill and courage. Despite her youth, Mary became a pillar of strength on the battlefield. Her calm demeanor and ability to act decisively under pressure inspired her fellow nurses and medics. Soldiers whispered her name with admiration, sometimes in disbelief that such a young woman could face horrors without flinching. Officers took note as well, recognizing the invaluable contributions of American women who were not just supporting the war, they were actively saving lives and changing its course. Mary's thoughts often returned to home. She thought of her parents, of the small Iowa town she had left behind, of the sisters and friends who had volunteered in factories and hospitals. Their courage, though different in form, mirrored her own. The war had brought the women of America together in unprecedented ways. Every letter she wrote home carried not only her experiences, but also her respect and admiration for the thousands of other women doing their part. She knew she was part of a story much larger than herself, a story of bravery, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of American women. As the sun rose higher, Mary continued her work. She navigated the chaos with grace, attending to the wounded, directing the movement of stretchers, and offering comfort to the dying. Each act, no matter how small, became a lifeline in a world where every second mattered. And though the sounds of war never ceased, the screams, the blasts, the shouts of commanders, Mary's presence brought a strange sense of order and hope. It was as if the calmness in her movements could cut through the chaos and remind everyone that life, courage, and humanity still mattered amid the madness of war. By the end of the first day on Normandy, Mary had tended to dozens of soldiers. Some survived because of her skill. Others, tragically, did not. Yet even in loss, Mary found resolve. She recorded her experiences in her diary. "I cannot save them all, but I will save as many as I can. This is what it means to serve, to be brave, to be human." Mary Thompson's landing on Normandy Beach was not just the beginning of a battle, it was the beginning of a legacy. In that first day, in the midst of destruction and fear, she became a symbol of American strength, resilience, and unwavering commitment to service. And though she was only 19, the world would come to know her as a hero whose courage would define the bravery of a generation. Mary Thompson's journey toward Normandy began long before the roar of artillery and the chaos of beach landings. Born in 1924 in Des Moines, Iowa, she was the youngest of 3 siblings in a family that valued courage, compassion, and hard work. Her father worked at a local factory, contributing to the war effort long before America officially entered the conflict, while her mother ran a small clinic from their home, attending to neighbors and the occasional injured traveler. From an early age, Mary was surrounded by stories of sacrifice, service, and determination. These stories shaped her ambitions and her understanding of what it meant to serve a cause larger than oneself. As a young girl, Mary displayed remarkable empathy. She would spend hours tending to injured birds, helping elderly neighbors with chores, and volunteering at the small community hospital. Her natural affinity for care extended beyond routine acts. She possessed a curiosity about human anatomy, medicine, and the subtle ways in which the body could heal. By the age of 16, Mary had completed basic first aid courses and had begun to shadow nurses at the hospital, learning both the technical and emotional aspects of caregiving. Her mentors noticed a rare combination of intelligence and compassion, and they encouraged her to pursue formal nursing training, a decision that would ultimately place her on the front lines of history. When Pearl Harbor was attacked in December 1941, the world shifted overnight. America entered a global war, and Mary felt an undeniable calling to serve. She watched news broadcasts, read every newspaper headline, and listened to radio updates with a mixture of fear and determination. She understood that the war would demand extraordinary courage from ordinary people, and she was determined to do her part. At 18, Mary applied to the Army Nurse Corps, a rigorous program designed to train women to serve both at home and overseas. Acceptance into the program was competitive. Only those with exceptional skill, discipline, and dedication were admitted. Mary's natural talent, combined with her unwavering commitment, secured her a place in the training program. Mary's training in Chicago was intense, pushing both her physical endurance and mental fortitude to their limits. Days were spent in classrooms, studying anatomy, battlefield medicine, and emergency procedures. Nights were filled with practical drills, managing simulated injuries, performing triage under time pressure, and learning to operate in environments where every second could mean life or death. The instructors instilled in their students a philosophy that would carry them through the most harrowing conditions. The patient always comes first. Fear is natural, but must never dictate action, and teamwork is the invisible lifeline that can turn chaos into survival. During training, Mary faced moments of self-doubt. Simulated exercises often left her physically exhausted and emotionally drained. Yet with each challenge, she discovered reserves of resilience she had never known existed. Fellow trainees quickly recognized her as someone who could remain calm under pressure, someone whose courage inspired others. One evening, as she assisted in a particularly grueling mock surgery, a peer whispered, "Mary, how do you stay so composed?" She replied simply, "I don't have a choice. Someone has to act. If I don't, who will?" These words would later prove prophetic, describing her unwavering commitment on the beaches of Normandy. By 1944, Mary had completed her training and was deployed to England as part of the preparatory forces for the Allied invasion of Normandy. The months leading up to D-Day were filled with anticipation and anxiety. She worked in field hospitals, learning the logistics of emergency care under combat conditions and witnessing firsthand the physical and emotional toll of war on soldiers. Each day was a lesson in adaptability, courage, and the unrelenting demands of service. She began to keep a detailed diary, chronicling her observations, fears, and reflections, a record that would later provide a deeply personal perspective on the experiences of American women in World War II. Mary's diary from March 1944 reads, "Every day I see the faces of young men, boys really, whose lives are about to change forever. They look at me with hope in their eyes, and I must be their strength. I feel fear, yes, but fear cannot guide my hands. Only duty and courage can do that." The preparation for Normandy was as much psychological as it was physical. Mary and her fellow nurses had to anticipate injuries, emotional breakdowns, and the logistical nightmare of treating hundreds of soldiers under relentless enemy fire. Each night, Mary would lie awake, rehearsing procedures in her mind, imagining herself moving from stretcher to stretcher, tending to the wounded with calm precision despite the chaos surrounding her. These mental exercises, combined with her rigorous training, fortified her resolve. When the orders for D-Day were finally given, Mary felt a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and responsibility. She knew that the events to come would test every skill she had acquired and every ounce of courage she possessed. Yet she also knew that her role and the role of thousands of American women like her was vital. The war effort depended not only on the men on the front lines, but also on the women who provided medical care, logistics, and unwavering support. Mary carried the weight of this with her as she prepared to board the landing craft, the salty sea air stinging her lungs, the horizon of Normandy looming ahead. As the landing craft approached the beach, Mary's thoughts drifted to the friends and family she had left behind, the parents who had nurtured her, the sisters who inspired her, and the community that had instilled in her the values of service and courage. She understood that she was no longer just Mary Thompson from Des Moines. She was a representative of American women everywhere, a living embodiment of resilience, skill, and compassion. Her arrival at Normandy would mark the beginning of a harrowing chapter, one that demanded everything she had to give: her training, her courage, her empathy, and her unwavering determination to save lives.
The first glimpse of Normandy from the landing craft was surreal and terrifying. Mary Thompson clutched her medical kit tightly, her knuckles white with tension. The sky was gray, heavy clouds blending with the smoke rising from the beaches. The sea churned violently, tossing the craft with every wave. Ahead, the sands of Omaha Beach stretched out, dotted with soldiers preparing to disembark, their faces masks of fear and determination. This was the moment Mary had been trained for, yet nothing could have fully prepared her for the reality she was about to face. As the ramp of the landing craft dropped, chaos erupted instantly. Soldiers scrambled into the water, the roar of gunfire deafening in her ears. The whine of bullets, the explosions of artillery shells, and the desperate cries of the wounded filled the air. Mary's first instinct was to panic, but she forced herself to focus. Every lesson, every drill, every long night of memorizing procedures became clear as she sprinted across the wet sand, assessing wounded soldiers and triaging injuries with precision. The battlefield was unlike anything Mary had seen in training. Men lay on the ground, some screaming in pain, others unconscious, their uniforms soaked with blood and water. Mary moved quickly, bending down to stabilize a soldier whose leg had been mangled by shrapnel. She applied a tourniquet, whispered reassurances, and directed a medic to move him to a safer location. Her presence radiated calm amidst the storm. Young soldiers looked at her as if she were a beacon in the chaos, a small figure carrying hope in the form of medical skill, courage, and compassion. Mary's first few hours on the beach were an intense blend of physical exertion and emotional strain. She carried soldiers, administered morphine, and stabilized critical injuries, all while bullets whizzed past and explosions shook the ground beneath her feet. Her mind was a constant calculation. Who needed attention first, which injuries could be treated on the spot, and which required immediate evacuation. She became a master of battlefield triage, making decisions in seconds that would save lives. Amid the carnage, Mary also encountered moments of profound humanity. A young soldier, no older than 17, clutched her hand and whispered a frightened plea. Mary knelt beside him, meeting his eyes, and said firmly but gently, "You're going to be all right. I won't let anything happen to you." She lifted him onto a stretcher, her arms steady despite the fear that gnawed at her own heart. This was the essence of her courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Hours turned into an eternity. Mary moved tirelessly from one wounded soldier to the next, her energy fueled by adrenaline and sheer willpower. She became a lifeline for countless men, directing fellow medics and nurses, organizing makeshift treatment areas, and ensuring that supplies were efficiently distributed. Her training in Chicago, the endless hours of drills and simulations, had prepared her technically, but nothing could have prepared her emotionally for the sheer scale of suffering and bravery she witnessed that day. By mid-afternoon, Mary had already performed dozens of life-saving interventions. She had carried soldiers across open fire zones, applied critical wound care, and comforted the dying. Her diary, which she scribbled in hurried moments when a brief pause allowed, recorded both the horror and heroism she witnessed. "I cannot believe the things I have seen today. The courage of these men, the fragility of life. I never imagined war would feel like this. Yet I also see strength, hope, and humanity in every face I touch." Even amidst trauma, Mary's interactions carried a profound emotional weight. She held hands with soldiers who feared they would not survive, whispered reassurances, and provided small comforts: a cool cloth on a fevered brow, a whispered word of encouragement, a reminder of home. In these moments, Mary embodied the strength and empathy of American women in the war. They were not just caretakers, but pillars of hope, courage, and resilience. As the day progressed, Mary faced one of her most dangerous tasks yet. A platoon had been pinned down by enemy fire, with several soldiers critically injured and exposed to open gunfire. Without hesitation, Mary ran across the sand, dodging bullets and debris, carrying 2 soldiers to safety. Fellow medics shouted for her to retreat, but she pressed on, driven by a determination that transcended fear. Her actions saved lives, and they became emblematic of the extraordinary courage of American women like Mary Thompson. By evening, Mary was exhausted but resolute. The beach had been secured in segments, but the work was far from over. She had witnessed death, despair, and chaos, yet she had also witnessed bravery, solidarity, and the unyielding will to survive. She reflected on the young men she had helped, and those she could not, feeling both sorrow and pride. Her diary captured these emotions with stark honesty. "I cannot save them all, but I will save as many as I can. That is my duty, and it is what I must do." The first day on Normandy Beach solidified Mary Thompson's place in history. She was no longer just a nurse from Des Moines. She had become a symbol of courage, resilience, and hope for American soldiers and for the millions of women across the United States contributing to the war effort. Her actions that day demonstrated that heroism was not defined solely by rank or position, but by the willingness to face fear, act decisively, and care deeply for others. In the quiet of the night, Mary Thompson's resolve solidified. She would continue to serve, to save lives, and to inspire those around her. She had faced her first day at Normandy, and she had emerged, not broken, but stronger. An embodiment of the courage and spirit of American women in World War II.
The nights after the initial landing on Normandy were restless and haunted. Mary Thompson often lay in her small cot, surrounded by the muffled sounds of distant artillery, soldiers' groans, and the quiet murmurs of fellow nurses. The adrenaline of the day would fade into exhaustion, but the images, sounds, and smells of the battlefield never left her mind. She reached for her diary, a small leather-bound book she had carried since her training days in Chicago, and began to write. Each entry became a lifeline, a way to process the chaos, fear, and grief that enveloped her. June 7, 1944. Today was unlike anything I have ever imagined. I carried men across the sand, applied morphine, bandaged wounds, and whispered promises I hoped I could keep. The explosions never stopped. And yet, amidst this chaos, I see moments of bravery, humanity, and hope. These young men trust me. I must not fail them. Her diary entries are not only records of the physical challenges she faced, but also windows into the emotional turmoil experienced by American women on the front lines. Mary wrote of guilt when she could not save a soldier, sorrow when a young man she had comforted hours earlier succumbed to his injuries, and the persistent fear that each new day would bring greater horrors. Yet, alongside the despair, she also documented small victories: a life saved, a wounded soldier's smile, a moment of camaraderie among medics and nurses. Mary's emotional resilience was remarkable. At just 19, she carried the weight of life and death decisions, often without any support beyond her fellow nurses. She learned to compartmentalize fear, sorrow, and stress, focusing on the task at hand while acknowledging the emotional toll internally. Each diary entry became a testament to her strength, her empathy, and her unwavering commitment to the soldiers she served. The diary also revealed her reflections on courage, not just her own, but that of the young men and women around her. I see bravery every day, not just in the men charging forward, but in my fellow nurses, in the women at home working tirelessly, in the medics who run into danger without hesitation. Courage is not a single act. It is repeated moment by moment. Mary's interactions with the wounded revealed another dimension of her heroism: emotional support. Soldiers, many only teenagers, clung to her words and presence as if they were lifelines. She held hands with men shaking with fear, whispered reassurances, and sometimes just listened. Listening became as important as any medical procedure, for in war, emotional wounds often festered as dangerously as physical ones. During one particularly grueling night, Mary tended to a group of soldiers who had been trapped under fire. One boy, no older than 16, had been separated from his unit and was severely injured. He trembled uncontrollably, his eyes wide with terror. Mary knelt beside him, her hands steady as she cleaned his wounds and applied bandages. She spoke softly, reminding him of home, family, and the fact that he would survive. Hours later, she watched him being evacuated, alive, and realized that these small acts of courage and compassion could ripple far beyond the battlefield. Mary also documented the exhaustion of her peers. Nurses worked in unceasing shifts, often without sleep, attending to the endless flow of wounded soldiers. Supplies were limited, stress was overwhelming, and the threat of enemy fire was constant. Yet, despite the hardship, Mary noticed a remarkable resilience among her fellow American women. They found strength in one another, shared brief moments of laughter amidst the sorrow, and supported each other through the relentless emotional and physical challenges. Her diary from June 9th captures a haunting moment. "I carried a soldier today whose screams will haunt me forever. He is gone now. I did all I could. I keep asking myself if I could have done more, but I know I did everything possible. Still, the guilt is heavy. We are trained for this, yet the reality is unbearable." Even in such moments, Mary's commitment never wavered. She recognized that emotional resilience was just as vital as medical skill. The soldiers depended not only on her hands, but on her presence, her calm, her empathy. Every whispered reassurance, every gentle touch, every act of courage under fire became a thread in the tapestry of survival that she wove for those around her. Mary's reflections also extended to the broader role of women in the war. She wrote about the factory workers, the volunteers, and the nurses back home who were keeping the nation running. These women, though far from the front lines, shared in the burden of sacrifice. Mary understood that her actions on Normandy were connected to the courage of American women across the country. She drew inspiration from their strength and sought to honor them in her service. Her diary entries from this period are filled with both horror and hope, despair and determination. They reveal a young woman confronting the extremities of human suffering while discovering the depths of her own courage and empathy. Mary's words paint a vivid picture of the emotional landscape of World War II, showing how American women navigated fear, loss, and responsibility with grace and resolve. By the end of this part of her journey, Mary had not only stabilized countless wounded soldiers, but also carved out a legacy of emotional courage. Her diary entries would later serve as a historical testament, inspiring generations of American girls to recognize that bravery is multifaceted. It is physical, yes, but also emotional, moral, and unwavering in the face of overwhelming odds. In the quiet moments between chaos, Mary Thompson's words and actions illuminated the essential role of American women on the front lines of Normandy. She exemplified how compassion, skill, and courage could coexist, and how a young woman driven by duty and heart could make an indelible mark on history. The third day on Normandy brought with it a new level of danger and intensity. Mary Thompson had already experienced the chaos of the landing, the terror of the first hours, and the relentless emotional toll of tending to the wounded. But nothing could have fully prepared her for the harrowing rescues she would perform that day, acts of bravery that would become legendary among soldiers and medics alike. The morning began with a barrage of artillery, shaking the sand and sending shrapnel flying across the beach. Reports came in that several soldiers had been trapped behind enemy lines, pinned down by machine gun fire. Mary, alongside a small team of nurses and medics, was ordered to assist with the evacuation. The terrain was treacherous. Mud, water, and debris made movement difficult, and enemy fire was constant. Yet, Mary knew hesitation could mean death for the trapped soldiers. Courage surged through her, tempered by the meticulous training she had received months before. She advanced first, carrying her medical kit and assessing the safest path forward. Each step required calculation, bravery, and the ability to adapt instantly to the shifting dangers around her. Bullets zipped past, and explosions rocked the sand beneath her feet, but Mary focused on the wounded soldier's survival. Her calmness, even amidst the chaos, became a guiding force for her fellow medics. Reaching the first injured soldier, Mary quickly assessed his condition. A young private had suffered a severe leg injury, his cries of pain mixing with the chaos of gunfire. Mary applied a tourniquet, bandaged the wound, and whispered reassurances. She then lifted him onto her back, carrying him across the open sand to a relatively safer zone. Her movements were precise, fluid, and fearless, a testament to both her physical conditioning and her mental resolve. Fellow medics marveled at her composure, noting that even in the most dangerous situations, she remained entirely focused on saving lives. Mary continued her daring efforts throughout the morning. She rescued another soldier trapped under debris, his body pinned and bleeding. With the help of a fellow nurse, she carefully extricated him, all while avoiding incoming fire. Each rescue required split-second decisions, courage beyond measure, and an unwavering commitment to the men depending on her. By noon, she had personally saved 5 soldiers, actions that would later be recounted in whispered admiration across the beach and in military reports. Her diary captures the intensity of that day. June 10, 1944. I ran across the sand, carrying 2 soldiers at once, dodging bullets and praying each step would be enough. I feel fear, but it is a tool, not a master. Every life I can save is worth the risk. Every step I take is for them. God, let me do this right. Mary's heroics were not limited to physical rescues. She also stabilized soldiers who were in shock, providing both medical treatment and emotional support. A young corporal, trembling violently, could not stop shaking as he recounted the death of his best friend. Mary held his hands, spoke gently, and reminded him of the strength that lay within him. These acts of emotional courage were as critical as any physical intervention, reinforcing the essential role American women played on the battlefield. As the day progressed, Mary faced the ultimate test of her bravery. A platoon of soldiers had been caught in crossfire, severely wounded and unable to move. Despite repeated orders from commanding officers to stay back due to the extreme danger, Mary pressed forward. She maneuvered across open ground, carrying 2 soldiers simultaneously, providing first aid mid-evacuation. Bullets zipped past, and explosions sent sand and debris into the air, yet she pressed on, unwavering. Her courage inspired nearby soldiers to follow her lead, creating a coordinated effort that saved lives and prevented further casualties. By evening, Mary's physical and emotional exhaustion was profound, yet she continued to document the day in her diary. She wrote of the moments of despair, the soldiers she could not save, and the overwhelming sense of duty that compelled her to keep going. Her words reflected not only the horrors of war, but also the extraordinary impact of women on the front lines. I am tired, beyond anything I have ever known. But I cannot stop. These young men depend on us, and I will not fail them. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Mary's heroics on this day cemented her reputation among both soldiers and medics. Stories of her courage spread quickly, and officers began to recognize the vital contributions of American women in combat situations. Her actions demonstrated that heroicism was not confined to battlefield strategies of generals or the firing of weapons. It was also present in the compassionate, fearless acts of young women like Mary Thompson, who risked everything to save lives. Beyond the immediate battlefield, Mary's courage had a ripple effect. Her presence inspired fellow nurses and medics to perform with greater efficiency and bravery. Soldiers, even those not directly treated by her, drew strength from knowing that someone like Mary was watching over them, ready to act, ready to protect, ready to care. In this way, her heroicism extended far beyond the immediate rescues, influencing the morale and effectiveness of everyone around her. By the end of the 5th day, Mary had established herself as a linchpin in the medical operations on Normandy Beach. She had personally rescued numerous soldiers, stabilized countless injuries, and provided critical emotional support. Her bravery under fire exemplified the strength, resilience, and determination of American women during World War II. She had shown that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively in its presence, a lesson that would inspire generations to come. Mary Thompson's heroic rescues were chronicled not only in her diary, but also in the memories of the soldiers she saved. They would recall her bravery with reverence, often insisting that her actions were pivotal in their survival. She became a living symbol of the extraordinary role American women played in the war, women whose courage, compassion, and dedication made a tangible difference in the lives of countless soldiers and shaped the course of history itself. Even the bravest souls carry invisible burdens, and Mary Thompson was no exception. After several days of relentless work on Normandy Beach, the adrenaline that had kept her moving began to give way to exhaustion, both physical and emotional. The battlefield was unrelenting, and while she saved lives with courage and precision, the weight of lives lost began to press heavily on her shoulders. Mary had faced fear head-on, but now she confronted the quiet, persistent guilt that came with the impossible responsibility of choosing who could be saved and who could not. In the dim light of the field hospital, Mary sat beside a row of cots, her hands shaking slightly as she cleaned instruments and bandages. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, the tang of antiseptic, and the quiet murmurs of pain from wounded soldiers. She glanced around, noting the young men who had survived because of her care and those who had not. Her heart ached for each one, especially the boys so young that they seemed more like children thrust into a nightmare than soldiers defending freedom. Mary wrote in her diary that night, capturing her raw emotions. June 12, 1944. I cannot sleep. Faces of the men I could not save haunt me. I keep replaying the moments, thinking of what I could have done differently. And yet I know I did all I could. Still, the guilt is a heavy burden. I wonder if it will ever leave me. The emotional toll of the battlefield was compounded by the constant danger. Every day brought new challenges, sudden attacks, incoming shells, and the risk of being hit while tending to the wounded. Mary learned to compartmentalize, focusing on immediate needs while trying to keep her mind and spirit intact. Yet during quieter moments, she allowed herself to feel the sorrow, the fear, and the overwhelming sense of responsibility that came with being a lifeline for so many. One afternoon, a young soldier was brought in, severely wounded and barely conscious. Mary worked quickly, her hands steady despite the panic in her chest. She stabilized him, administered morphine, and spoke to him gently, offering comfort. When he murmured something about home, tears welled in her eyes. She held his hand, whispering reassurances, knowing that even if she saved his life physically, the emotional scars of battle would linger. These moments of connection, brief as they were, reinforced Mary's understanding that nursing in war was as much about empathy and courage as it was about skill. Mary also observed the emotional strain on her fellow nurses. Many were young women, barely older than herself, confronting horrors they had only read about in history books or heard about in training. Together, they supported each other, sharing words of encouragement, quiet laughter in moments of respite, and tears when the weight of their experiences became too much. Mary emerged as a quiet leader among them, not through authority, but through her steadfastness, courage, and unwavering compassion. Her diary reflects her growing awareness of the psychological demands of war. We are trained for wounds, for injuries, for the physical aspects of survival, but nothing prepares you for the emotional toll. I feel responsible for every life that passes through my hands. The men depend on us not just for medicine, but for hope, for reassurance, for humanity. I carry that weight now, and I must bear it with strength. As the days continued, Mary developed coping mechanisms to navigate the relentless stress. She relied on structured routines, brief moments of meditation, and the simple act of recording her thoughts and feelings. Each diary entry became a therapeutic exercise, a way to process grief and maintain her own emotional stability. She wrote candidly about her fears, acknowledging them while refusing to let them control her actions. This honesty, combined with her determination, allowed her to remain effective and compassionate in the face of overwhelming adversity. Mary's experience highlights a crucial aspect of wartime nursing: the invisible battles fought by women who cared for the wounded. Their heroism was not only measured in lives saved, but also in their ability to endure mental and emotional strain without faltering. Mary's story exemplifies how American women contributed not only through physical labor and technical skill, but through resilience, empathy, and moral courage. Despite the exhaustion and emotional weight, Mary never wavered in her commitment. Each time a soldier's life was saved, each time she provided comfort to someone in pain, she found renewed purpose. Her courage became both a personal anchor and an inspiration to those around her. Fellow nurses often remarked on her ability to maintain composure and empathy simultaneously, a rare quality that elevated the standard of care under the most extreme circumstances. Mary's diary entry from June 15th captures the duality of her experience. "I am tired beyond words, yet I cannot rest. The men need me, and I need to continue. Fear, sorrow, and exhaustion swirl within me, but I focus on each breath, each heartbeat, each life. We are more than nurses here. We are hope, courage, and humanity in a world that desperately needs it." By the end of this part of her journey, Mary had confronted the harshest realities of war: fear, loss, and guilt, yet had emerged stronger, more determined, and profoundly aware of the essential role of American women in the conflict. Her emotional struggles, recorded with honesty and depth, provide a compelling window into the inner life of a young woman who faced unimaginable challenges with courage, compassion, and unwavering dedication. Mary Thompson's story reminds us that heroism is not only measured in battlefield feats, but in the ability to endure, to care, and to act with courage and empathy when the world is at its darkest. In these moments of quiet struggle and reflection, American women like Mary left an indelible mark on history, proving that strength comes in many forms: physical, emotional, and moral. By the middle of June 1944, Mary Thompson had established herself as a quiet but powerful presence among the nurses and medics stationed on Normandy Beach. Her courage, skill, and emotional resilience had not gone unnoticed. Fellow nurses looked to her for guidance, soldiers trusted her implicitly, and commanding officers relied on her ability to remain calm and decisive in the most chaotic circumstances. Mary's influence extended beyond her medical expertise. She had become a beacon of hope, a source of strength, and a model of leadership that inspired everyone around her. The relationships Mary built with her fellow nurses were forged under the harshest conditions imaginable. These women, like Mary, were young and often far from home for the first time in their lives. They shared long, exhausting shifts, tending to the wounded, comforting the dying, and facing the ever-present threat of enemy fire. Through these shared experiences, bonds formed that were deeper than friendship. They were a lifeline. Mary's ability to listen, encourage, and offer practical guidance strengthened the cohesion of her team. One nurse, Evelyn Carter, later recounted, "Mary had a way of keeping us calm when everything was falling apart. She didn't just tend to the soldiers, she tended to us too. Her courage made us feel like we could do anything." Mary's leadership was subtle yet profound. She rarely issued direct orders, preferring instead to guide through example. When others faltered under stress or fear, she would quietly step in, demonstrating the proper procedure, offering encouragement, or simply taking on extra tasks to lighten the burden. Her presence reassured her peers, creating a sense of stability amid the relentless chaos of the battlefield. Interactions with soldiers further highlighted Mary's extraordinary character. She treated each wounded man with dignity, compassion, and unwavering attention, recognizing that morale and emotional support were as critical as medical intervention. She remembered their names, their hometowns, and often asked about their families, small gestures that created a profound human connection. Soldiers often confided in her, sharing fears, hopes, and memories of life before the war. These interactions deepened her understanding of the human cost of battle and reinforced her commitment to her mission. Mary's diary entry from June 18th reads, "They trust me with their lives and their stories. I feel the weight of that trust, but it strengthens me. Every soldier I care for is a reminder of why we are here, why courage matters, and why compassion cannot be forgotten, even in war." Leadership on the battlefield was not just about courage or skill, it was also emotional intelligence. Mary understood that fear could paralyze even the strongest soldiers, and she made it her mission to instill confidence and calm. Her approach combined technical expertise with empathy, creating an environment where medics, nurses, and soldiers could perform at their best. On one occasion, a group of new nurses arrived at the field hospital, visibly shaken and uncertain of their roles. Mary took the time to orient them, demonstrating procedures, calming anxieties, and sharing insights from her own experiences. By the end of the day, these women were functioning with confidence, able to tend to the wounded with efficiency and care. Mary's leadership had transformed fear into competence, panic into focus. Mary also served as a moral anchor. In moments of despair, when casualties mounted and the odds seemed insurmountable, she reminded those around her of the importance of their work. She would quietly say, "We cannot control the chaos, but we can control how we respond. Every life we touch matters." These words, simple yet profound, reinforced the courage and determination of her team and inspired soldiers who witnessed her actions firsthand. Her diary entries during this period reveal the depth of her commitment. June 20, 1944. "I see so much suffering, yet I also see bravery in every face. My fellow nurses are incredible, so young, so strong. Together, we can save lives, provide hope, and remind everyone here that humanity still exists, even in war." Mary's interactions with soldiers were not limited to medical care. They also included moments of mentorship and emotional guidance. She encouraged young men to focus on small victories, to hold on to hope, and to support one another. These efforts created a ripple effect, boosting morale and fostering resilience across the battlefield. Soldiers often remarked that Mary's calm presence and unwavering dedication gave them the courage to continue fighting even in the direst circumstances. By the end of Part 7 of her story, Mary Thompson had proven that heroism on the front lines was multifaceted. It encompassed not only acts of physical bravery, but also emotional courage, leadership, and the ability to inspire others around her. Mary Thompson's story illustrates the extraordinary contributions of American women on the front lines. Through her skill, empathy, and leadership, she demonstrated that courage is not defined solely by combat, but also by the quiet, relentless acts of service, support, and compassion that sustain life in the darkest hours of history. Her legacy would resonate for generations, a testament to the vital role of women in shaping the outcome of the war and in inspiring future generations of American girls to pursue courage in all its forms. In the chaos of Normandy, medical supplies were limited. Conditions were harsh, and every decision carried life or death consequences. Mary Thompson quickly realized that her training alone would not suffice. She would need to innovate, improvise, and solve problems under immense pressure. These skills would distinguish her not only as a skilled nurse, but as a resourceful leader capable of adapting to the unpredictable realities of war. Mary observed that the sheer number of casualties overwhelmed the field hospitals. Stretchers were scarce, bandages ran low, and evacuation routes were often blocked by debris or enemy fire. She recognized that without swift adaptation, lives would be lost unnecessarily. Drawing on her training and creativity, Mary began devising systems to streamline care. She reorganized treatment areas, creating clearly defined triage zones that prioritize soldiers by the severity of their injuries. This simple but effective approach drastically improved efficiency, ensuring that the most critical patients received immediate attention. Her ingenuity extended beyond organization. When the nurses ran out of essential supplies, Mary improvised with whatever was available. Clean cloths became bandages, makeshift splints were fashioned from wooden planks, and available vehicles were repurposed as mobile treatment stations. Mary's ability to think quickly and adapt solutions in the midst of danger earned her the respect of her peers and the gratitude of countless soldiers whose lives depended on her ingenuity. One particularly harrowing situation involved a sudden influx of casualties after an unexpected enemy artillery strike. The field hospital became overwhelmed almost instantly, with more wounded than could be treated at once. Mary immediately assessed the situation, directing nurses and medics to critical patients and improvising additional treatment stations using crates, tents, and stretchers. Her calm, decisive actions prevented chaos from descending into catastrophe and saved dozens of lives that day alone. Mary's diary captures her reflections on these moments. June 22, 1944. Supplies are low, the wounded keep coming, and the chaos never ceases. Yet I see solutions in the madness. Improvisation is not a luxury, it is survival. Every decision I make now could mean life or death, and I must trust my instincts. Innovation also took a personal form. Mary noticed that many soldiers were hesitant to seek help for fear of slowing down medical teams or appearing weak. She took the time to reassure them, gently encouraging them to accept treatment before injuries worsened. This approach not only saved lives, but also fostered trust between patients and caregivers, a critical component of effective battlefield medicine. Her leadership and problem-solving extended to emotional crises as well. When a medic broke down from the overwhelming stress, Mary took him aside, speaking quietly, offering support, and reminding him of the lives they had saved. She understood that maintaining morale among the medical staff was as important as treating injuries on the battlefield. The emotional well-being of nurses and medics directly impacted their ability to function under pressure, and Mary's empathetic guidance helped sustain her team through the relentless days of the Normandy campaign. Mary's ingenuity also influenced the broader medical operation. Field hospitals began to adopt some of her systems, recognizing their effectiveness in managing both personnel and patient flow. Commanding officers took note of her practical solutions, and her methods were shared with other units facing similar challenges. Mary's ability to innovate under pressure highlighted the vital role American women played in the war effort, not only as caregivers but as strategic problem solvers who could adapt to extreme circumstances. Despite the intensity of the work, Mary found moments of reflection and inspiration. She often walked through the temporary hospital tents at night, observing the young men she had helped stabilize. Each life saved reaffirmed her sense of purpose and reminded her why innovation, courage, and compassion were indispensable on the battlefield. These quiet moments strengthened her resolve to continue serving, no matter the challenges she faced. Her diary from June 24th reads, "Every day tests my mind as much as my hands. I invent, adapt, and adjust constantly. War is chaos, but we can bring order to it with courage, intelligence, and compassion. Every life we save proves that our efforts matter." Mary Thompson's problem-solving extended beyond immediate medical concerns. She anticipated potential crises, organized contingency plans, and trained newer nurses to think creatively under pressure. Her approach transformed the field hospital into a more resilient, responsive operation capable of handling surges in casualties without descending into disorder. Through her example, Mary demonstrated that leadership, ingenuity, and adaptability were as critical to survival as skill or bravery. By the end of Part 8, Mary's legacy as a pioneering nurse on the Normandy front lines was firmly established. She had shown that American women were not only capable of enduring the horrors of war, but could actively shape outcomes through intelligence, initiative, and relentless dedication. Mary's story serves as a powerful reminder that heroism is multifaceted, encompassing courage, compassion, and the ingenuity required to thrive even in the most desperate circumstances.
Amid the relentless rhythm of battle, Mary Thompson found herself clinging to the smallest threads of normalcy. A quiet moment to breathe, a fleeting pause to write, and the letters from home that arrived sporadically. These letters reminded her of the life she had left behind, of the family that worried for her, and of the innocence she had sacrificed for duty. Homesickness was a constant companion, blending with the exhaustion and emotional weight of her role on Normandy Beach. Yet it was also a source of motivation, grounding her in the reasons she fought through each grueling day. Mary often retreated to a corner of the field hospital tent during rare moments of calm. She would pull out a notepad or her diary and write letters to her parents, her younger siblings, and a close friend from Des Moines. The words she wrote were a mixture of reassurance, longing, and reflection, a way to maintain her connection to home while processing the chaos around her. Dear Mom and Dad, I think of you constantly. I wish I could be anywhere but here, yet I know this is where I am needed most. I am learning more about courage and love than I ever imagined. These letters revealed the emotional duality of her experience. On one hand, she carried immense responsibility, witnessing pain, death, and suffering daily. On the other, she nurtured a profound hope and empathy, striving to maintain her humanity amidst the inhumanity of war. Each letter was both a lifeline and a declaration of her resilience, a tangible connection to a world beyond the battlefield. Mary's personal reflections were deeply intertwined with her role as a caregiver. She recognized that the soldiers depended not only on her medical expertise, but also on her ability to provide emotional reassurance. She wrote, "I see the fear in their eyes, the young boys who feel they have no choice but to fight. My words, my presence, my willingness to hold a hand or whisper courage is as important as any bandage or morphine shot. I carry their hope with me." The letters also served as a coping mechanism, a way to vent frustration, sorrow, and longing. She wrote candidly about the fear that gripped her when the artillery shells exploded nearby, about the despair when a soldier she had saved slipped away despite her best efforts, and about the fatigue that never seemed to lift. Yet in every letter she found ways to reaffirm her commitment, to remind herself that her work mattered, and to draw strength from the love of her family. Mary's connection to her home also inspired moments of quiet reflection. During brief lulls in activity, she would close her eyes and imagine the familiar streets of Des Moines, the laughter of her siblings, and the warmth of her parents' embrace. These mental escapes allowed her to recharge emotionally, giving her the resilience to return to the relentless demands of the battlefield. She drew strength from the thought that her service was part of a larger effort. Women across America were contributing to the war, each in their own way, and her sacrifices were connected to theirs. Her diary from June 26th captures a particularly poignant reflection. "I feel so far from home, yet I carry it with me in every step I take. Each life I touch is a reflection of the love I have for my family, my country, and the people who believe in me. I miss them fiercely, yet I know that my duty is here." Courage is not only for the battlefield, it is in enduring this distance, this uncertainty, and continuing to serve despite the longing in my heart. Mary also recognized the power of hope in sustaining herself and others. She often read aloud letters from home to soldiers who had not heard from their families in weeks, offering them comfort and a brief escape from the chaos surrounding them. These small acts created moments of shared humanity, bridging the distance between the battlefield and the lives the soldiers had left behind. In doing so, Mary reinforced the essential role of American women as nurturers, supporters, and bearers of hope in the darkest hours of World War II. Amid the emotional strain, Mary's personal reflections deepened her empathy. She began to understand the unique struggles faced by each soldier, the fear, the uncertainty, the longing for home, and approached her work with even greater sensitivity. This emotional intelligence made her not only an effective nurse, but also a trusted confidant, someone the soldiers relied upon for reassurance as much as for medical care. Mary's letters and diary entries reveal a young woman navigating the complexities of war while maintaining her humanity. She balanced intense emotional challenges with professional responsibility, demonstrating the multifaceted courage of American women on the front lines. Her words, filled with longing, hope, and unwavering commitment, illustrate the profound emotional labor that accompanied physical bravery during World War II. By the end of Part 9, Mary had emerged as both a skilled caregiver and an emotional anchor for those around her. Her reflections on home, her letters to family, and her ability to sustain hope amidst chaos showcased the depth of her character and the extraordinary contributions of American women in shaping not only the outcomes of battle, but also the morale and humanity of the soldiers they served. Mary Thompson's story in this phase underscores a vital truth. Courage is multifaceted, encompassing not only physical bravery, but also emotional resilience, empathy, and the ability to nurture hope in others. Through her reflections, letters, and unwavering commitment, Mary exemplified the profound impact American women had on the war effort, leaving an enduring legacy of compassion, courage, and inspiration.
By late June, Mary Thompson had gained a reputation among soldiers and officers for her unwavering courage and keen medical judgment. One morning, a convoy arrived carrying several critically wounded officers, their injuries severe and complicated. The field hospital was already stretched thin, and the additional cases threatened to overwhelm the nurses and medics. Mary, however, faced the challenge without hesitation, immediately assessing the situation and delegating responsibilities efficiently. The first officer brought in had a shrapnel wound to the chest. His breathing was shallow and his condition was critical. Mary quickly stabilized him, instructing another nurse to prepare emergency bandages and supplies. She remained calm under the pressure, her hands steady as she worked to prevent further blood loss. Her ability to maintain composure inspired her team to function at their best, even under intense stress. Next, a young lieutenant with a fractured leg and severe internal bleeding arrived. Mary coordinated with medics to set up a temporary surgical station, improvising with the limited resources at hand. Using her training, experience, and ingenuity, she performed the initial stabilization procedures, ensuring the officer could survive long enough to be evacuated to a fully equipped facility. As the day progressed, Mary encountered numerous challenges requiring quick thinking. One officer suffered from shock, nearly collapsing under the strain of his injuries. Mary immediately recognized the signs, administering fluids, calming him with steady words, and carefully monitoring his vital signs. Her combination of technical skill and empathy reassured him, demonstrating the critical importance of emotional care along medical intervention. At one point, a medic turned to her in panic, unsure how to handle multiple emergencies simultaneously. Mary calmly took charge, organizing the team, prioritizing cases, and delegating tasks. Her instructions were clear and precise, allowing the team to function seamlessly despite the overwhelming circumstances. Her leadership prevented chaos and ensured that all officers received timely and effective care. Mary's diary entry captures the intensity of these moments. June 28, 1944. The officers arrived wounded, and the tent was chaos. I do not have the luxury of hesitation. Every moment counts. I direct, stabilize, and hope that my hands and my team can keep them alive. Courage is action in the face of impossible odds. While the physical demands were immense, Mary also had to navigate the emotional challenges of treating high-ranking officers. They often carried not only physical injuries, but the weight of responsibility, fear for their men, and guilt over surviving when others did not. Mary provided not just medical treatment, but a listening ear, a calming presence, and reassurance that allowed them to focus on recovery. One officer, trembling in near despair, confided in her, "I thought I'd never see my men again. I feel responsible for them." Mary held his hand, speaking softly, "You did all you could. Now we help you heal so you can continue to lead." Moments like these highlighted Mary's unique ability to combine skill, empathy, and emotional intelligence under extreme pressure. Later that day, a sudden air raid forced the hospital to evacuate its most critical patients. Mary coordinated the movement, ensuring that each officer was safely transported without worsening injuries. Her planning and decisiveness prevented further casualties, and her calm under fire reassured both soldiers and nurses. Mary also faced difficult moral decisions. With limited supplies and multiple emergencies, she often had to prioritize treatment based on survival probability. These moments tested her judgment and emotional resilience. She relied on training, instinct, and compassion to make decisions quickly, fully aware that every choice carried profound consequences. Her interactions with officers also allowed her to influence military morale. They recognized her courage and dedication, often recounting her actions to their units, reinforcing the essential role of American women in the war effort. As the day drew to a close, Mary's hands were raw from constant work and her body ached with exhaustion. Yet she continued to monitor her patients, adjust treatment plans, and guidance to her fellow nurses. Her tireless dedication demonstrated the depth of commitment required to sustain life under relentless wartime conditions. Mary's diary entry from June 29th sums up the relentless demands. Exhaustion cannot dictate my actions. Lives depend on precision, speed, and compassion. Every decision matters. Every touch matters. I will do everything I can for those entrusted to my care. Nightfall on Normandy Beach brought an entirely different set of challenges. Darkness concealed both opportunity and danger, and Mary Thompson quickly learned that her courage and vigilance were required around the clock. The faint moonlight reflected off sand and debris, casting eerie shadows across the field hospital. While many nurses sought brief respite, Mary remained alert, knowing that every minute could mean life or death for the wounded soldiers. The first emergency of the night arrived shortly after dusk. A soldier had been critically injured during a reconnaissance patrol and required immediate attention. The usual pathways to the hospital were compromised by shell fire, so Mary had to navigate the treacherous terrain while carrying medical supplies. Each step demanded careful calculation. One misstep could jeopardize both her safety and the soldier's survival. She advanced with determination, moving swiftly yet cautiously, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Upon reaching the injured man, Mary immediately assessed his condition. He had suffered multiple shrapnel wounds and was losing blood rapidly. With practiced skill, she applied tourniquets, administered morphine, and stabilized him for transport. The precision of her movements and the calmness in his voice reassured the soldier, who trembled not only from pain but from fear. Mary's presence transformed terror into hope, a quiet force amid the chaos of war. Throughout the night, Mary faced a series of emergencies that demanded quick thinking and fearless action. One particularly harrowing situation involved a group of soldiers trapped behind a collapsed wall after an artillery shell hit their position. Smoke and debris filled the area, and enemy fire continued to rain down. Without hesitation, Mary led a small team to rescue the men, improvising stretchers from spare materials and guiding them carefully through the hazardous terrain. Her courage inspired others to follow, creating a coordinated effort that successfully evacuated all the trapped soldiers. Mary also dealt with psychological crises among the wounded. Nighttime amplified fear, and many soldiers suffered panic attacks or intense anxiety. Mary moved from cot to cot, offering words of reassurance, holding hands, and using her empathy to stabilize both body and spirit. Her emotional intelligence became as critical as her medical skill, as she balanced tending to physical injuries with calming the mental strain that accompanied them. During a lull between emergencies, Mary took a brief moment to review supplies. She realized that limited medical resources would require careful prioritization and inventive solutions. Improvising once again, she repurposed available materials to create makeshift bandages, splints, and portable treatment kits. Her foresight and adaptability ensured that the field hospital remained operational despite the relentless pace of the battlefield. Mary's diary entry from June 30th captures the intensity of the night. The darkness makes everything sharper, the fear, the injuries, the urgency. Yet I move forward. Every life matters, and I cannot allow exhaustion or fear to dictate my actions. I rely on skill, instinct, and courage to guide me. At one point, a young corporal was brought in severely wounded and barely conscious. Mary worked tirelessly to stabilize him, staying by his side through the longest hours of the night. She whispered encouragement, applied life-saving treatment, and monitored his vital signs with unbroken attention. Her focus never wavered, even as fatigue gnawed at her body and the sounds of battle raged in the distance. Mary's leadership during night operations extended to coordinating the entire nursing team. She communicated with medics, organized patient care, and ensured that no one was left unattended. Her ability to maintain order and efficiency under extreme pressure prevented mistakes that could have cost lives. Fellow nurses often noted that her calmness and decisiveness provided a grounding force, allowing the team to function at peak effectiveness despite exhaustion and danger. She also took personal risks that went beyond professional duty. On several occasions, Mary ventured into areas under fire to retrieve critically injured soldiers, moving with calculated precision to minimize danger while ensuring life-saving care. These acts of bravery did not go unnoticed. Soldiers frequently recounted her heroics in letters home, spreading stories of the young American nurse whose courage seemed limitless even in the darkest hours. Mary's actions during night operations highlight the critical role of American women on the front lines. Their contributions extended beyond the daylight hours, encompassing acts of heroism that required skill, emotional resilience, and fearlessness. Mary Thompson exemplified the bravery and ingenuity of young women who served tirelessly, often unseen, yet whose impact was profound and far-reaching. As the night slowly gave way to dawn, Mary finally allowed herself a brief rest, her body aching but her resolve intact. She reflected on the lives saved, the fear faced, and the unwavering dedication that had carried her through the hours of darkness. Even in exhaustion, her commitment to the soldiers and her mission remained unbroken, a testament to the extraordinary contributions of American women during World War II. By early July, the Normandy campaign had intensified, and Mary Thompson found herself facing one of the most challenging days of her service. A sudden bombardment had resulted in a mass casualty event,
bringing dozens of severely wounded soldiers to the field hospital simultaneously. The nurses were already stretched thin, supplies were limited, and the urgency of the situation demanded rapid, decisive action. Mary stepped into the chaos with calm determination, immediately assessing the severity of each patient and delegating tasks to her fellow nurses with precision. The wounded arrived in waves, some carried on stretchers, others crawling or limping under their own strength. Mary moved from one soldier to another, triaging injuries and prioritizing care based on survival probability. Her hands worked tirelessly, applying dressings, stabilizing fractures, administering pain relief, and guiding the less experienced nurses through each step. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Mary maintained clarity and focus, her leadership ensuring that no life was neglected. One of the most critical cases was a young soldier with multiple shrapnel wounds to the abdomen and legs. His condition was life-threatening, and Mary knew immediate intervention was essential. She organized a team to perform stabilization procedures, improvising with available supplies while maintaining sterility as best as possible under the circumstances. Her swift decisions and technical skill kept the soldier alive long enough for evacuation to a fully equipped facility. Mary also faced the emotional strain of the event. The wounded soldiers were terrified, many screaming in pain or calling for comrades who had not survived. Mary moved among them, offering gentle reassurance, holding hands, and using her calm presence to reduce panic. Her empathy was as vital as her medical expertise, helping soldiers endure their injuries while the team worked tirelessly to save lives. Amid the chaos, Mary identified opportunities for innovation. She realized that the limited number of stretchers slowed patient transport and triage. Thinking quickly, she repurposed crates, boards, and spare equipment to create additional transport stations, allowing wounded soldiers to be moved more efficiently. This improvised system prevented bottlenecks and ensured that each patient received timely care. Her diary entry from July 3rd captures the intensity of the day. "The wounded keep coming. I cannot pause. I cannot falter. Every moment is critical. Every action matters. I guide, I stabilize, I reassure. We improvise, adapt, and push forward. Lives hang in the balance, and we cannot fail them." Mary also mentored younger nurses during the mass casualty event, teaching them to remain calm under pressure, to prioritize effectively, and to trust their training. Her guidance allowed less experienced team members to contribute meaningfully, increasing the hospital's overall capacity to save lives. Fellow nurses later recounted how Mary's calm leadership transformed a potential disaster into a coordinated, life-saving operation. The day also tested Mary's ethical judgment. With limited supplies, she faced difficult choices about who could receive immediate care and who would have to wait. These decisions weighed heavily on her conscience, yet she relied on her knowledge, training, and intuition to act swiftly. She understood that in war, hard choices were unavoidable, and her responsibility was to maximize survival while maintaining compassion and dignity for every patient. Throughout the ordeal, Mary demonstrated extraordinary stamina. She worked continuously for hours, often skipping meals and ignoring her own fatigue, driven by an unwavering commitment to the soldiers in her care. Her resilience inspired those around her, instilling confidence and determination in both nurses and medics. Mary's actions during the mass casualty event highlighted the critical role of American women in the war effort. Their contributions extended beyond traditional caregiving, encompassing leadership, problem-solving, and emotional support under extreme circumstances.
Mary exemplified how courage, ingenuity, and empathy could combine to save lives and shape outcomes on the battlefield. As the day ended and the remaining casualties were stabilized, Mary allowed herself a moment to breathe. She reviewed her diary notes, documenting every critical decision, every improvisation, and every act of care. These records served not only as personal reflections, but as a testament to the extraordinary dedication and skill of women like her who worked tirelessly behind the lines. Early July brought a new wave of challenges as the Normandy front lines remained volatile. Mary Thompson faced an emergency that would test both her medical expertise and personal courage. A sudden enemy shelling near the field hospital caused multiple injuries and structural damage, creating a scenario of extreme danger. Nurses scrambled, soldiers screamed, and chaos reigned. But Mary acted with clarity, her instincts guiding her through the peril. One of the first casualties was a soldier trapped beneath debris. Mary did not hesitate. With 2 medics at her side, she navigated the unstable rubble, lifting wooden beams and clearing rubble to reach him. She stabilized his injuries on the spot, administered pain relief, and coordinated his evacuation. The risk to her own safety was immense, yet she moved with a balance of precision and fearlessness that inspired those around her. Throughout the night, more wounded arrived, many injured by the bombardment. Mary's leadership became the backbone of the operation. She organized triage zones, assigned nurses and medics based on skill and stamina, and ensured that every life received attention, even when resources were scarce. Her ability to remain calm under fire and make split-second decisions saved countless lives. At one point, a young corporal with a severe leg injury required immediate surgery, but the operating area was partially collapsed. Mary improvised, using available boards, tarps, and makeshift supports to create a functional space. She coordinated the procedure, instructing fellow nurses with calm authority while maintaining sterility and focus. Her hands moved quickly, but her empathy never wavered. She spoke gently to the corporal, offering words of comfort amid the pain and chaos. Mary's diary entry from July 5th reflects the emotional intensity of the night. Shells fall, the ground shakes, and yet we work. Fear is constant, but action is necessary. Each life saved is a triumph against chaos. I cannot falter. I cannot pause. Courage is my only guide. The personal bravery Mary exhibited during these emergency evacuations was extraordinary. She repeatedly entered areas under direct threat to ensure soldiers were rescued, often carrying supplies, stretchers, and even injured men herself. Fellow nurses later recounted how Mary's fearlessness inspired them to act with equal determination, turning a moment of potential disaster into a coordinated, life-saving effort. Mary also had to balance the physical demands of her actions with the emotional needs of her patients. Many soldiers were traumatized by the bombardment, panicked and terrified. Mary moved among them, offering calm reassurance, holding hands, and using her voice to steady their breathing. Her presence became a beacon of hope, a reminder that someone cared and was willing to risk everything for them. Her quick thinking extended to logistics as well. With damaged equipment and limited supplies, Mary reorganized the field hospital, ensuring that critical tools and medications were immediately accessible. She instructed nurses on how to improvise bandages, splints, and emergency treatments, maximizing efficiency without compromising patient care. Her ability to combine strategic planning with hands-on action made her indispensable during moments of crisis. Mary's efforts did not go unnoticed by soldiers and commanding officers alike. They praised her calm under fire, her ingenuity in improvisation, and her unwavering dedication to saving lives. Her actions highlighted the critical role American women played in sustaining the war effort, demonstrating that heroism extended far beyond combat roles. As dawn approached, the last of the casualties were evacuated or stabilized. Mary finally allowed herself a brief moment to rest, reflecting on the perilous night, the lives saved, and the extraordinary efforts of her fellow nurses. Even in exhaustion, she understood that her commitment to duty and her courage under fire had made a tangible difference on the battlefield. Mary Thompson's actions during emergency evacuations exemplified the bravery, resourcefulness, and emotional strength of American women serving in World War II. Her story shows that heroism is not only measured by combat achievements, but by the courage to face danger head-on while caring for others, and the resilience to sustain life and hope under the most extreme conditions. As July drew to a close, the battlefield around Normandy began to show signs of transition. The intensity of combat remained, but the American forces were slowly gaining ground. For Mary Thompson, this period was marked not only by continued medical challenges, but also by deep reflection on the past weeks, on fear, courage, survival, and the profound impact of her service. Mary walked through the field hospital, observing her fellow nurses and medics as they worked tirelessly. Each one carried the weight of countless lives saved, each scarred by the emotional toll of war. She thought about the young men she had treated, many of whom would survive because of her skill, ingenuity, and relentless dedication. At 19, she had experienced more in months than many would in a lifetime. Fear, exhaustion, triumph, loss, and hope all intertwined in the relentless rhythm of battle. She reflected on the letters she had sent home and the responses she had received. Her family's words of encouragement had been a source of strength, reminding her that her sacrifices were recognized and valued. Mary realized that her personal growth was inseparable from her experiences on the front lines. She had learned resilience, leadership, and empathy on a scale she had never imagined. The soldiers she treated had also left an indelible mark on her. Their bravery, their camaraderie, and their trust in her care reinforced her sense of purpose. Mary recognized that her role extended beyond nursing. She was a source of hope, morale, and stability in a world turned upside down by war. Each patient had taught her something about courage, humanity, and the capacity for resilience in the face of adversity. Mary's diary entry from July 31st captures the culmination of her reflections. "I have seen suffering beyond words, yet I have also seen courage beyond measure. The soldiers, my fellow nurses, and I have endured more than I imagined possible. I am stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Every life I have touched, every decision I have made has shaped who I am and who I will become." Her experiences had also shaped her understanding of the larger role of American women in the war effort. Mary recognized that their contributions extended far beyond the battlefield. Women like her provided critical care, maintained morale, innovated under pressure, and inspired those around them. They were an essential force, demonstrating that courage and heroism took many forms, and that their impact would resonate long after the war ended. Mary reflected on moments of fear and peril, recognizing that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She thought of the nights spent under fire, the mass casualty events, the improvisations with limited supplies, and the countless small acts of care and reassurance. Each moment had demanded not only skill, but emotional strength and moral clarity. These experiences had forged her into a leader, a caretaker, and a symbol of the extraordinary capabilities of young American women. She also considered the bonds formed during her service. Friendships with fellow nurses had deepened into lifelong connections. Shared trials and triumphs had created unbreakable trust and camaraderie. Mary understood that these relationships were a vital component of resilience, providing emotional support and sustaining hope even in the darkest hours. Mary's final reflections included a quiet recognition of her own limits and achievements. She had endured exhaustion, fear, and emotional strain, yet had continued to serve tirelessly. She acknowledged the sacrifices she had made, her youth, her comfort, and her personal safety, but also embraced the profound sense of fulfillment and purpose that came from saving lives and making a tangible difference. Her diary concludes with words that capture the essence of her journey. "I leave this chapter knowing that I have given everything I could. I have grown, I have learned, and I have witnessed the extraordinary capacity for courage in both myself and those around me. I hope that my service has made a difference, that the lives I touched carry forward strength, hope, and resilience."